On his 38th birthday, a self-made millionaire was turned away from the most sought-after table in Vancouver, and it was a single father and his 7-year-old son who changed everything he thought he knew about himself. James Whitmore had not planned to celebrate. He never did, not really. Birthdays were inventory checks for other people. Count the gifts, count the calls, count how many people showed up. James had long since stopped counting. He left the Whitmore Capital offices at 8:15 that Thursday evening with nothing more specific in mind than finding a decent meal somewhere that didn't involve reheated takeout in a glass tower on Burrard Street. He saw the restaurant from half a block away. Harbor and Salt. 6 months old. Impossible to get into. A reservation list that reportedly stretched to March. The kind of place where the lighting was warm and amber and people lingered over their wine and looked, from the outside, like they had figured something out about life that everyone else had missed. James had meant to book a table back when it opened. He had asked his assistant twice. It had never happened. He told himself it didn't matter. He pushed open the door anyway. The maitre d' was a woman in her 40s with reading glasses pushed up on her head and the precise, practiced calm of someone who spent her evenings telling successful people no. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" "I don't," James said. "Table for one. I don't need anything special." She looked at the screen in front of her the way people look at something when they already know the answer and are simply confirming it. "I'm afraid we're fully committed this evening. We do have availability in." There are empty tables. He could see them, 2 of them, near the windows. "Those are being held for reservations arriving within the next 20 minutes, sir." "I'm sorry. If you'd like, I can put your name on the cancellation list." James looked at the tables. He looked at the woman. He had, in the past 14 years, negotiated contracts worth 8 figures, restructured a company with 400 employees, and convinced a room full of skeptical investors to trust him with their money. He was being stopped by a clipboard. "How long for the cancellation list?" "Tonight? Honestly, sir, probably the full evening." "I'm sorry." He nodded once. The way you nod when you're not going to say the thing you're actually thinking, and he turned around. He was 3 steps from the door when a voice came from a table to his left. Not loud, just directed. "Hey, you can sit with us if you want. We've got a spare chair." James stopped. He turned slowly, the way you turn when you're not entirely sure you heard correctly. The man who had spoken was perhaps 32, maybe 33, with the look of someone who had recently come from somewhere outdoors. There was still a faint line on his forehead from a baseball cap, and his jacket was the practical kind, not the expensive kind. Beside him, folded sideways in his chair with one leg dangling off the edge, was a boy of about 7 with thick dark hair and the expression of someone conducting a private, ongoing assessment of the world. "We ordered already," the man said, "but the chair's just sitting there." James glanced around the restaurant once, old instinct, checking who was watching. No one was watching. "I don't want to intrude," he said. "You're not intruding, I'm Ryan." The man extended his hand. "And this is my son, Marcus." "Marcus, say hi." "Hi," Marcus said, without looking up from whatever he was drawing on the paper placemat. James shook Ryan's hand and sat down before he had consciously decided to. The chair was comfortable. The table smelled faintly of rosemary from somewhere in the kitchen. "James," he said. "You look like you had a rough day, James," Marcus said, still drawing. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. "Marcus, what?" "He does, he has that face." "What face?" James said. Marcus held up his crayon and pointed it in James's general direction. "That one. Like when something didn't go the way you planned and you don't want to talk about it, but you also kind of do." James looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at the ceiling. "He does this," Ryan said. "I apologize in advance. It's fine." James picked up the menu. He's not wrong. The waiter appeared, looked at the new arrangement with only mild surprise, and took James's order without comment. Halibut, seasonal vegetables, sparkling water. Marcus objected to the sparkling water immediately. "Plain water is sad," Marcus said. "Regular water is just giving up." "I'm driving," James said. "Dad always says that too." Marcus went back to his drawing. "But sometimes I think grown-ups say they're driving just so nobody asks questions about what they're drinking." Ryan put his bread down. "Marcus, we've talked about saying everything we think. I know, you said to use a filter, but I don't think I have one. You definitely don't." There was something about the rhythm of it, the easy, worn-in back and forth between the father and the son, that made James feel, strangely, like he was watching something real in a city full of performance. He had dinner with people all the time. Business dinners, obligation dinners, the occasional first date that went politely nowhere. He could not remember the last time he had sat at a table where no one was managing their impression. "What do you do?" Ryan asked, not aggressively. "Just the question people ask. Finance," James said. "Investments? Mostly. Private equity. Some real estate." He paused. "You?" "Structural engineer." Ryan tore a piece of bread. "Bridge and highway infrastructure, mostly. Nothing that'll impress anyone at a dinner party. I don't go to dinner parties." "Smart," Ryan smiled, not the professional smile James had learned to spot instantly. An actual one. "How'd you end up here without a reservation?" "This place has been booked since September. I forgot to book it." "Forgot or didn't think you'd need to?" James considered that for a moment. "Didn't think I'd need to." Ryan nodded once, without judgment. "That's honest, at least." Marcus looked up then, fully, for the first time. He studied James with the unnerving directness that very young children and very old people shared, because neither group had learned yet to pretend they weren't looking. "Is today your birthday?" Marcus asked. James blinked. "How did you? You keep looking at your phone and then putting it face down really fast. Like you don't want to see the notifications." "Dad does that on Father's Day because he says it makes him emotional, but he doesn't want us to know." Marcus picked up his orange crayon. "People only ignore their phones on days that matter." Ryan stared at his son. "I did not know you noticed that." "I notice everything. You both make the same face and you don't realize." James reached forward and turned his phone face down on the table where it currently sat face up. He had been doing exactly that. He hadn't noticed either. "It's my birthday," James confirmed. Marcus nodded gravely. "You should have ordered something better than sparkling water on your birthday." "I'll take that under advisement." The food arrived. It was very good. The kind of good that reminded James why he'd wanted to come here in the first place. Ryan and Marcus were eating something that involved a shared plate and some ongoing negotiation about who had taken more of the roasted potatoes. Marcus accused Ryan of strategic potato theft. Ryan denied it unconvincingly. "Do you have kids?" Marcus asked James, somewhere between the first course and the main. "No, why not, Marcus?" Ryan started. "It's a real question." "Dad says real questions deserve realcy answers." "I also said there's a time and a place," Ryan said. "It's dinner." "That's a time and a place." James looked at the boy. The boy looked back at him, unhurried, holding a fork with a piece of salmon balanced on it. "I never got around to it," James said. Marcus chewed, considered. "Did you want to?" Ryan pressed his hand over his face. "I thought I did," James said. "At some point. Things got busy." "Dad says that's what people say when they're scared of something, but they don't know how to say they're scared." "Marcus." "What? I'm just repeating what you said. Not at the table." "When else am I supposed to say it?" James laughed. It surprised him. The sound of it, how it came out without preparation. He had not laughed at a dinner table in longer than he could accurately recall. By the time dessert menus arrived, James had learned that Ryan was from Kamloops originally, had moved to Vancouver 11 years ago for work, and had raised Marcus alone since the boy was 2. He didn't offer the last part with any particular weight, the way some people do, waiting for sympathy. He said it the way you mention a fact about the weather. It was simply the shape of their life. "His mother?" James asked, quietly, while Marcus was focused on selecting the most serious possible chocolate option from the menu. "She left when Marcus was 18 months. Wasn't ready for it. We'd been together 3 years, but parenthood turned out to be a different category of thing than either of us expected." Ryan looked at his son with an expression that contained a great deal that he wasn't saying. "I was angry for a long time, then I wasn't. Marcus doesn't remember her, which makes it easier and harder at the same time." James said nothing, because there was nothing useful to say. "He's the best thing I ever did," Ryan said, simply. "I just want to make sure I do it right." Marcus put the menu down with a decisive click. "I want the chocolate lava cake. And before either of you say anything, it's Dad's birthday dinner for someone we just met, so the regular rules don't apply." "It's my birthday," James said. "Exactly." Marcus folded his hands. "Special occasion." They ordered 3 lava cakes. James paid before Ryan could object, and Ryan objected anyway. And James pointed out that he had been given a table in a restaurant that had no tables, which was worth considerably more than the cost of dessert. And Ryan considered this and said fine, but only because the logic was sound. not because he was comfortable with it. Outside afterwards, the October air off the water was sharp and clean. Burrard Inlet sat a few blocks away, and you could smell it. Salt and cold, and the particular Vancouver combination of mountain and ocean that James had grown up with and still noticed sometimes when he remembered to. Marcus ran a few paces ahead and then stopped to inspect something on the sidewalk with the complete absorption children bring to small discoveries. "Do you actually like this city?" Ryan asked. James thought about it. "I live here." "That's not the same thing." "No," James admitted. "I suppose it's not. I love it here," Ryan said. "Even on the gray days. Especially on the gray days, actually. Something about the clouds sitting down on the mountains. It looks like the city's being held in something." James looked up. The mountains to the north were invisible in the dark, but he knew exactly where they were. He had looked at them every day for 20 years and had stopped actually seeing them at some point he couldn't identify. "Marcus," Ryan called, "what did you find?" "A rock that looks like a dog," Marcus called back. "Or a small bear. It's unclear. Leave it where you found it. But what if the person who needs it walks by after we're gone?" Ryan looked at James. "This is what we talk about at home. Whether rocks need to be in the right place for the right person to find them." Does he have an answer? He has 17 answers. They're all different depending on the day. Marcus came back, pocketed nothing, and announced that he had decided to leave the rock for someone who needed a dog or a bear and couldn't afford the real thing. He said this with complete sincerity. Ryan messed up his hair. Marcus fixed it with great seriousness. "There's a hot chocolate place 2 streets over," Marcus said, looking at James. "They put cardamom in it. It's kind of weird, but also kind of great." "Marcus," Ryan said, "James probably has somewhere to be." James looked at his watch. He had nowhere to be. He had never had anywhere less to be. "Cardamom hot chocolate sounds like a reasonable next step," he said. Marcus made a sound that was somewhere between approval and triumph and led the way. The café was small and warm and smelled of spices and ground coffee. They took the corner table. Marcus had the hot chocolate. Ryan had an Americano. James had a tea he didn't particularly want because it was something to hold. Marcus drew on a napkin while they talked. Actually talked, the way James had once known how to do, before conversations became strategy. Ryan mentioned, at some point, that he was in the middle of a custody disagreement, not a dramatic one. Marcus's mother had resurfaced 3 months ago, after 5 years of no contact, with interest in being involved. Her lawyer had sent a letter. Ryan's response had been measured. He wasn't angry, he said, but he wasn't naive either. Marcus was doing well. He was happy and settled and doing brilliantly in school, and Ryan had no intention of destabilizing that for anyone, regardless of what a letter said. "What does Marcus know?" James asked. "That his mom and I were different kinds of people, and that she lives far away. When he's older, there'll be more conversation. Right now, I just want him to know he's loved and secure." Ryan wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. "That's the whole job, honestly. Just make sure they know they're secure." Marcus looked up. "I'm right here. I know. You can talk about it in front of me. I already know she might come back." Mrs. Chen at school said, "Sometimes parents who weren't ready get ready later." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "And what do you think about that?" "I think it depends," Marcus said carefully, with the precise seriousness of someone who has given the matter genuine thought. "Being ready now doesn't fix not being there then. Those are 2 different things." Neither adult spoke for a few seconds. 7 years old, James said finally. "Almost 8, Marcus corrected, in 3 weeks. I keep telling Dad that almost 8 is its own whole category." Ryan looked at James over the rim of his coffee cup with an expression that said, clearly and without words, "This is what every day is like, and somehow it never gets old." James's phone buzzed. He looked at it without thinking, another birthday message from someone he would eventually reply to, and set it face down again, but this time more slowly, more deliberately. "You going to answer any of those tonight?" Ryan asked. "Tomorrow." "Not a celebration person." "I used to think I was," James said. "Then I think I just got tired of the version of celebrating that involves performing happiness for other people." He turned the teacup in his hands. "This is actually the best birthday I've had in about 10 years. Marcus did not look up from his drawing. "That's a little sad but also really nice," he said. "Both the same time. Those are the best kind of things." They left the cafe just before 10. On the sidewalk, Marcus shook James's hand with the grave formality of someone concluding a meeting. "It was good to meet you, James." "You too, Marcus. If you come back to that restaurant," Marcus said, "make a reservation this time. The halibut is good, but the duck is better. Dad had the duck." James looked at Ryan. "I had the duck," Ryan confirmed. "Good to know." They parted ways at the corner. Ryan and Marcus toward the SkyTrain. James toward the parking structure on Thurlow. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment after they turned the corner, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the street. The city was doing what Vancouver did at night, all reflection and water light, and that particular amber gray that never quite went dark. He got in his car and sat there for a moment without starting it. He had spent his birthday at a table he hadn't reserved, with people he hadn't known, eating food he hadn't planned on, and had laughed more genuinely than he had in longer than he was entirely comfortable admitting. He drove home. He slept better than he had in months. In the morning, he did something he almost never did. He texted his assistant a personal message, not a task, not a request, just a note saying he was taking Friday afternoon off. His assistant replied immediately, "Finally. I was going to start leaving pamphlets about work-life balance on your desk." He almost smiled at that. He also called the city's best family law firm and asked for a referral to whoever handled custody mediation. He told the receptionist it was for a friend, which it was, or close enough. At 2 o'clock, his phone showed a text from a number he didn't have saved, which meant he must have given out his number at some point in the evening. And then he remembered. Marcus, at some point near the end, had very casually asked Ryan for his own phone, typed something, and handed it back. Ryan had looked at the screen, then at James, and said with great restraint, "Apparently you've been added to our contacts." The message said, "Marcus wanted me to check if the duck recommendation held up. Did you try it yet?" Ryan James looked at the message for a moment. He thought about how long it had been since someone had sent him a message with no angle to it, no ask, just a question that was only a question. He typed back, "Not yet, might need a guide. Is almost 8 available for consulting work?" The response took 4 minutes. Then he says his rate is 1 lava cake per consultation. Non-negotiable. James booked 2 seats at Harbor and Salt for the following Saturday. Then, after a moment, he changed it to 3. The weeks that followed had a shape he hadn't expected. Saturday dinners became a loose habit. Marcus ran them with what he called the agenda, which was a piece of paper folded in fourths on which he had written, in careful block letters, the things he wanted to discuss. The agenda items varied widely. They included whether bridges or tunnels were more trustworthy. Ryan's professional opinion was requested and given. Whether it was possible to be allergic to Mondays, Marcus believed yes. Whether James had ever been truly afraid of something, he had. He said so. Marcus nodded and said that was important. Fear meant the thing mattered. Ryan watched all of this with the particular expression of a man who has learned to be surprised by things and grateful for the surprise. James was gradually understanding, one of the most quietly capable people James had ever met. He moved through the world without performance. He built things, real things, physical things that had to hold weight and withstand weather, and he brought that same non-negotiable solidity to everything else he did. He was funny in the driest possible way. He remembered what people said. He was honest without being cruel about it, which was rarer than it sounded. And he was beautiful, in the way that some people are beautiful without deploying it. The way you only notice it after a while, because they've never once used it as a tool. James noticed. He didn't quite know what to do with noticing. In November, the letter from Marcus's mother's lawyer escalated. She was requesting supervised visits and potential shared holidays. Ryan's own lawyer said it was manageable but time-consuming. Ryan said that was fine, he'd manage. He always managed. James, who had been copied on nothing and had no standing whatsoever in the situation, spent a weekend making calls anyway. He knew people, not lawyers, but the kind of people who knew which lawyers were worth knowing. He mentioned this, carefully, over coffee one Wednesday when Marcus was at a sleepover. Ryan looked at him for a long moment. "You called people," Ryan said. "I made some inquiries, for my custody situation, for a friend's custody situation, generally." Ryan set down his coffee. "James, you don't have to use any of it." "That's not." Ryan stopped. Started again. "I know you mean well, I do, but this is my family. You don't get to manage it." "I'm not trying to manage it." "What are you trying to do?" James sat with the question. He was not accustomed to sitting with questions. He was accustomed to answering them before they finished forming. "I don't entirely know," he said finally, which was true. "I just didn't want you to fight it alone because you couldn't afford the right people. That felt wrong." Ryan was quiet for a moment. The café around them went about its business. Someone at the counter ordered something complicated. Outside, a cyclist navigated the November rain with grim determination. "I can take care of my son," Ryan said. His voice was steady but not cold. "I've been doing it for 7 years by myself. I don't need rescuing. I know. Do you?" James looked at him, at the set of his shoulders, at the careful, controlled way he was holding himself together, the way people hold themselves when they're tired but unwilling to show it. "Yes," James said, "but I think there's a difference between needing rescuing and letting someone stand next to you." Ryan looked at the window, the rain on it, the light. "I'll think about it," he said finally. That was all. But he didn't leave. They stayed another hour, and when Ryan left, he squeezed James's shoulder once, briefly, on the way out, which was more than he had needed to do. The hearing was in December, 2 days before Christmas. Marcus's mother arrived with her lawyer, who was polished and efficient and prepared. Ryan arrived with the lawyer James had quietly suggested, who was quieter and more prepared. The documentation Ryan had accumulated over 7 years of sole parenting, the receipts, the school records, the medical history, the simple arithmetic of presence, was, the judge noted, thorough. Marcus's mother was granted 1 supervised visit per month with a review in 6 months. Ryan was confirmed as primary guardian in all respects. Outside the courthouse, the December sky over Vancouver was doing something complicated with the light. Clouds and winter sun making long shadows on Smythe Street. Ryan stood on the steps and looked at it for a moment before he did anything else. He texted James 2 words. "Just 2, we won." James was in a meeting. He saw the message and excused himself from the room. He typed back, "Of course you did. Lava cake tonight?" The reply came in 1 minute. "Marcus is already asking what took you so long." Ryan and James did not move quickly. That was deliberate, on both their parts. There was a child involved, which meant the stakes were different, which meant patience was not optional but necessary. And also, James was discovering, neither of them was especially practiced at this. Ryan, because he had been so fully focused on Marcus for so long that there was a certain recalibration required. James, because he had been, for most of his adult life, better at acquiring things than allowing them. But there were evenings, long ones, after Marcus was asleep, when they sat at Ryan's kitchen table and talked in the way that you only talk with someone when you've stopped trying to be a particular version of yourself for them. James learned that Ryan had cried once, alone in his car on Marcus's first day of kindergarten, and had found that embarrassing until he didn't anymore. Ryan learned that James had bought his company because he was afraid of working for other people, and that the fear hadn't gone away once he'd done it, it had just taken a different shape. Marcus, for his part, did not require a formal announcement. One Saturday in February, he asked James, matter-of-factly, if he was going to be around for a long time. James said yes. Marcus said, "Okay, good," because he needed someone to explain compound interest for a school project, and Dad said it wasn't his area, and Google was making it more complicated, not less. James explained compound interest. Marcus listened with total attention and then said it was basically just patience made into math. James thought about that for the rest of the day. In March, on a Saturday evening when the crocuses had appeared in the park and the city had exhaled after winter, Ryan made dinner at home. The 3 of them, at a real table, with decent wine for the adults and sparkling water for Marcus, who was going through a phase of declaring sparkling water sophisticated when he was in a sophisticated mood. After dinner, James helped with the dishes. Ryan stood next to him, drying, and the kitchen was warm and smelled like garlic, and the lemon dish soap Marcus had chosen because it smelled, he said, like optimism. Outside, the street was that early spring dark that still carries cold but suggests warmth is a week away at most. Ryan handed him a bowl to rinse and didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I'm glad you pushed the door open that night." "I thought I was being turned away," James said. "You were being turned toward something else." Ryan set the bowl on the rack. "Marcus said that, by the way. I'm not that poetic on my own. Marcus is 7, almost 9 actually. He would want you to know." James dried his hands. The kitchen was quiet except for the water still running in the pipes. From the other room, Marcus could be heard explaining something to himself in a low voice. Probably rehearsing. probably for whatever presentation he had coming up about the salmon habitat of the Fraser River, which he had mentioned approximately 40 times this week. "I didn't know what I was looking for," James said. "That night. I thought I just wanted a quiet dinner. Did you get it?" James thought about Marcus's assessment of his face, about the hot chocolate with cardamom, about the rock that looked like a dog, or possibly a small bear, about compound interest being patience made into math. "No," he said. "I got something considerably better." Ryan smiled. Not the held-back version he sometimes wore, the careful one, the one that started at the corners and meant it. Marcus appeared in the doorway in his socks, holding a piece of paper. "I made an updated agenda," he said, "for the next Saturday dinner. Item 1 is the salmon presentation. Item 2 is compound interest review. Item 3 is..." He looked at the paper, then at the two of them, then back at the paper, "whether this is officially a family now, because Sophie at school says her family has 2 dads, and I told her mine might be getting to that, and she said I should put it on the record." Ryan looked at James. James looked at Ryan. Neither of them spoke for a second. "Put it on the record," James said. Marcus nodded very seriously and made a small check mark on the paper. "Good," he said. "That simplifies a lot of things." He turned around and went back to the living room, already explaining the salmon thing to himself again, his socks making no sound on the hardwood, his handwriting faint and careful and entirely sure of itself. The kitchen was quiet again. Outside, Vancouver was doing the thing it does in early spring, all that gray light turning slowly, unmistakably, into something you could call hope, and James Whitmore, who had walked into a restaurant on his birthday looking for a table and a quiet dinner and absolutely nothing more, stood in a warm kitchen with a man who built things that held weight, and a child who noticed everything and understood, with a clarity he had not expected to feel, that some doors you don't plan to push open are the only ones that matter.